At the beginning of the story, we meet 12-year-old Rob, who lived with his father, Robert, in a small motel in rural Florida. One morning, after getting ready for school, Rob grew tired of waiting for the bus, so he wandered into the nearby woods to pass the time. As he walked through the trees, memories of his mother filled his mind. She had passed away just a few months earlier, and the loss still weighed heavily on him. While exploring, Rob noticed an old, abandoned shack hidden deep in the woods. Curious, he slowly walked closer, but the moment he reached it, he froze. Inside a rusty steel cage was a massive Bengal tiger. The tiger locked eyes with him, and terrified, Rob turned and sprinted back to the motel. He grabbed his backpack just in time to catch the school bus. School wasn't much better. Two boys, Billy and Norton, spent the entire bus ride making fun of him. At the next stop, a new student named Sistine climbed aboard. The moment Billy and Norton heard her name, they started mocking her too. She was clearly upset, but chose to ignore them and quietly took her seat. Later in class, Sistine introduced herself, but her awkward introduction made everyone laugh. Embarrassed, she quietly returned to her desk. Meanwhile, Rob couldn't focus on the lesson at all. Instead, he sketched the same tiger he had seen that morning. As he stared at the drawing, memories of his mother came rushing back. Before cancer had taken her life, she had taught him how to carve beautiful things from wood. Even when she was too weak to move around, she had done everything she could to pass her creativity on to him. Just then, Rob was called to the principal's office. There, Principal Felmer examined the sores on Rob's legs. Rob suffered from a serious skin condition that caused painful blisters, and some parents had begun worrying that it might spread to their own children. Although the condition wasn't contagious, the principal still asked Rob to stay home for a while and continue taking his medication. The news crushed him. As Rob walked out of the office, the art teacher accidentally dropped a stack of drawing papers. He quickly helped her pick everything up. She thanked him warmly and introduced herself as Miss Mills. When she noticed the tiger sketch in his hand, she asked if he had drawn it himself. Rob shyly nodded and handed it to her. She was genuinely impressed. "You've got real talent. When you come back to school, I'd love to see more of your artwork." Rob quietly explained that the principal had told him to stay home because of his condition. Smiling kindly, Miss Mills replied, "Then whenever you do come back, I'll be waiting to see your drawings." For the first time that day, Rob smiled. Later during lunch, Rob was sitting alone outside when a group of girls started bullying Sistine by throwing a ball at her. She finally lost her temper and fought back, but one of the girls was much stronger and shoved her hard to the ground. Rob couldn't stay silent anymore. "Leave her alone!" The girls immediately turned their attention toward him. Frightened, Rob ran away. Later, on the bus ride home, Sistine sat beside him. Her hair was messy, her clothes were dirty, and the other kids were still laughing at her. Frustrated, she admitted that she already hated this town. "The people here are awful, even the teachers." Trying to comfort her, Rob told her about his skin condition and explained that he wouldn't be coming back to school for a while. Sistine surprised him by saying, "I wish I had your condition. Then I wouldn't have to come to school either." Rob smiled and explained that it wasn't contagious, so that could never happen. Feeling a little guilty, Sistine apologized and promised that while he was stuck at home, she'd bring him his homework every day so he wouldn't fall behind. That evening, Rob's father read the letter from the principal and became furious. He had already explained many times that Rob's condition wasn't contagious. Still, knowing there wasn't much he could do, he decided Rob would stay home for the time being. After applying medicine to Rob's legs and making him dinner, the house finally grew quiet. Later that night, Rob returned to his favorite hobby, wood carving. This time, he carefully carved a small wooden figure that looked just like Sistine. Then he went to bed, but that night, he had a strange dream. He saw Sistine running through the dark woods, and suddenly, she was riding on the back of the same giant Bengal tiger. What that mysterious dream meant was something the story had yet to reveal. The next day, Rob was helping Willie, the motel's housekeeper, clean the rooms. Smiling, she handed him a piece of chewing gum and jokingly said, "You better get back to school, or you'll end up cleaning rooms like me." She asked why he wasn't in class, and Rob explained that the sores on his legs had gotten worse. Willie smiled and said, "I've got my own cure. Those sores are full of sadness. You've been missing your mom so much that you've pushed all that pain down into your feet. You need to let those feelings come back up." A little later, the school bus drove past the motel as usual. Rob was working in the garden when Billy and Norton threw a ball at him from the bus. bus. It slammed into his stomach, leaving him in pain. Rob quietly thought to himself, I wish that tiger were my friend. Then maybe I wouldn't have to put up with people like them. Just then, the bus door opened, and Sistine stepped off. She had brought his homework. As they talked, Rob finally shared the secret he'd been hiding. He told her about the real Bengal tiger, locked inside a cage deep in the woods. Sistine's eyes lit up instantly. Then take me there. Rob warned her they'd have to hike through thick woods, so she borrowed some of his old clothes to keep her nice outfit from getting dirty. While changing, she noticed the beautiful wooden carvings scattered around his room. Amazed, she said, you know, Michelangelo started by carving things too. One day, you could become an incredible artist. Then she spotted a small wooden figure that looked exactly like her. Smiling, she picked it up. This is me, and it's perfect. Rob turned bright red, too embarrassed to say anything. Soon, the two of them headed into the woods. Along the way, Sistine explained that she lived with her mother, who was planning to open an antique shop in town. When she asked about Rob's mom, he quietly admitted that she had passed away. The conversation grew quiet after that. Eventually, they reached the old shack. There, the giant Bengal tiger was still trapped inside the steel cage. Standing so close to the powerful animal left both of them speechless. Sistine sadly asked, why would anyone keep him locked up like this? Rob guessed the tiger probably belonged to the motel owner, Beauchamp. That immediately made Sistine angry. No animal deserves to spend its life locked in a cage just because someone wants to own it. Rob agreed, but he pointed out that the cage was far too strong to break open. Suddenly, they heard a truck approaching. Hiding behind the trees, they watched as Beauchamp himself arrived. Not wanting to get caught, the two kids quietly slipped away and hurried back to the motel. When they returned, Rob's father was waiting for them. Sistine greeted him politely before stepping into the laundry room to call her mom. Robert smiled at his son and asked about his new friend. Then he noticed Sistine was wearing Rob's clothes. Rob explained that they had gone into the woods and her nice clothes had gotten dirty. Seeing his son with a real friend after such a long time brought Robert a little comfort. A while later, Rob returned Sistine's clothes, and they waited outside together until her mother arrived. The moment she pulled up, she demanded to know where Sistine had been all day. Then she looked at her outfit and snapped, "You look like a homeless kid." Sistine hated being talked to that way. The tension quickly grew worse. Trying to make conversation, her mother told Rob, "The only person my daughter ever listens to is her father." That only made Sistine even angrier. Without another word, she climbed into the car. Still arguing, she and her mother drove away. Rob watched them disappear, reminded of the happy Christmases he used to spend with both of his parents before his mother's death changed everything. The next morning, Rob was working with Willie again when he asked, "Is it right to keep a wild animal locked in a cage?" Willie shared a story from her childhood. Her father had once given her a little green bird named Cricket. She loved it dearly, but she couldn't stand seeing it trapped inside a cage. One day, she secretly set it free. Her father was furious, saying she had doomed the bird to die in the wild. But Willie never regretted her decision. "Sometimes," she smiled, "it still feels like Cricket visits me in my dreams and sings." Her story stayed with Rob. Later that day, while he was working outside the motel, the owner, Beauchamp, walked over and offered him a job. "If you help me out, I'll pay you well," Rob agreed. Beauchamp explained that he had recently acquired a very valuable wild animal, but taking care of it was a lot of work. It needed food every day and someone to keep an eye on it. He asked Rob to come with him. Rob hesitated because his father had told him to help Willie, but Beauchamp cut him off. "Your dad isn't the boss here. I am." With no choice, Rob climbed into the Jeep, but the moment they arrived at the old shack, his heart sank. Standing inside the cage was the same Bengal tiger. Beauchamp casually explained that he had taken the tiger from a man who owed him a lot of money. When he couldn't pay, "I took the tiger instead." That's how real men settle their deals. Beauchamp showed Rob how to feed the tiger, but the moment he stepped too close to the cage, the tiger slammed into the bars with a deafening roar. Beauchamp jumped back in fear and fell to the ground. Rob almost laughed, but managed to hold it in. Beauchamp then handed him the cage keys and said that from now on, taking care of the tiger was his responsibility. Rob asked, "What's his name?" Beauchamp shrugged. "It's just a worthless animal. It doesn't need one," as if it understood the insult. The tiger immediately sprayed him with urine through the bars. Beauchamp stumbled back in disgust, while Rob couldn't help smiling. On the way back, Beauchamp warned him not to tell anyone about the tiger. Then he handed Rob a bag of raw meat and told him to feed it every day. Just then, Miss Mills drove by. Sensing something was off, she asked Rob what was going on. Rob brushed it off, saying everything was fine. Before leaving, she smiled warmly. "When you come back to school, come see me." Back at the motel, Rob hid the bag of meat and stared at the cage keys. For a moment, he wondered, should he set the tiger free? Just then, the school bus arrived, and Sistine jumped off. She wanted to see the tiger again. The two hurried back into the woods. This time, Rob confessed everything. He told her that Beauchamp had put him in charge of feeding the tiger and had even trusted him with the keys. Sistine's eyes lit up. Then we can free him. She explained that such a rare tiger deserved to live in the wild. But Rob wasn't so sure. Remembering Willie's story, what if he can't survive on his own after being trapped for so long? Sistine refused to back down. He's a tiger, Rob, not a pet. The two argued until, overwhelmed with emotion, Sistine started shaking the cage. Moments later, her anger turned into tears. Rob gently comforted her. Then she pulled the heavy tarp off the cage so the tiger could finally breathe fresh air and see the sky. As night fell, the two kids stayed beside the cage, lying under the stars. Without saying much, they felt a quiet bond forming between themselves and the lonely tiger. Later that night, they returned to the motel, where Willie spotted them. Sistine spoke a little rudely, but Willie didn't take offense. Instead, she smiled and said, "Not every battle is won with anger. Sometimes the greatest victory is learning to control yourself." Her words made Sistine quietly reflect. Before leaving, Willie handed both kids a piece of chewing gum. When Rob got home, his father noticed the bag of meat and asked where it came from. This time, Rob told him the truth. The moment Robert learned it was from Beauchamp, he exploded with anger. He threw the bag against the wall. "He thinks we can't even afford decent food. He barely pays me enough to survive, yet expects me to work like a dog every single day." Rob tried to calm him down, but Robert only asked to be left alone. Feeling helpless, Rob went outside and buried himself in carving wood again. The next morning, he gave Willie a beautiful wooden bird he had carved himself. She loved it. Rob smiled and said, "Now you won't have to wait for your bird to visit you in your dreams." When Willie asked who had taught him to carve like that, Rob quietly replied, "My mom." Just then, Sistine arrived. She admitted her mother had forbidden her from seeing him, but she came anyway. She suggested asking an adult for advice, so the two of them took Willie into the woods. At first, Willie didn't believe them, but the moment she saw the caged tiger with her own eyes, she stood there in complete shock. Sistine immediately said, "We have to set him free." Willie gently disagreed. She explained that after spending so many years in captivity, the tiger might not survive alone in the wild. Another argument broke out. Sistine insisted that wild cats belonged in nature. Willie sadly replied that today's world wasn't safe for wild animals anymore, but Sistine refused to give up. Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's still the right thing. Frustrated, she turned to Rob. "I hate you, and don't ever talk to me again." Those words crushed him. Sistine stormed away, while Willie tried to comfort him, but only moments later, Rob ran after her. When he finally caught up, he looked her in the eyes and said, "I'll set the tiger free for you." At first, Sistine could hardly believe it. Then a smile slowly returned to her face. Together, the two kids prepared to make the biggest decision of their lives. Just then, Beauchamp showed up and told Rob, "I left today's meat behind the office." Then he walked away to speak with Rob's father, Robert. Seeing their chance, Rob and Sistine hurried into the woods. With trembling hands, Rob pulled out the key and finally unlocked the cage. They knew the tiger hadn't eaten in 2 days, but they also knew it didn't deserve to spend another moment in captivity. Slowly, the tiger stepped out. For a few quiet seconds, it simply looked at the two kids, almost as if it were thanking them. Rob and Sistine gently reached out to pet him. Then the tiger let out a mighty roar and disappeared into the woods. The two kids smiled, believing they had finally done the right thing. But only seconds later, a gunshot echoed through the forest. Sistine collapsed in shock. Rob helped her up, and they both ran toward the road. When they got there, their hearts sank. The tiger was lying motionless on the ground. At first, Rob thought his father had killed it. Furious, he lashed out at Robert, but the truth was very different. Beauchamp and Robert had gotten into a fight. Robert never wanted to hurt anyone, but Beauchamp pulled a gun. During the struggle, Robert managed to take the gun away. Then, as the tiger charged toward Beauchamp, Robert had no choice but to fire. Before Rob could fully understand what had happened, he shoved his father and shouted, "I hate you." Years of buried pain finally poured out. "You never even said Mom's name." Those words broke Robert's heart. For the very first time since her death, he quietly whispered, "Carolyn." The moment Rob heard his mother's name, tears filled his eyes. Father and son embraced, finally sharing the grief they had both been hiding. Nearby, Willie comforted Sistine as everything slowly settled down. After Robert had saved his life, even Beauchamp's attitude changed. He thanked Robert, considered him a friend, and even forgave the money he owed. Looking up at the sky, Willie softly said, "That tiger's in a better place now." As Rob finally let go of the sadness he'd carried for so long, even the sores on his legs began to heal. A little later, Sistine apologized. "You really are my best friend." The two walked forward together. Along the way, Sistine admired Rob's drawing of the tiger. "It's beautiful." Rob smiled. "You can keep it if you want." Overwhelmed with happiness, Sistine gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. And with that, the two friends walked toward a brighter future together. And that's where this touching story comes to an end.